She's got a good ignition, waiting for dividends. Who wants to help me burn my candles? I'm for brands.
Shirley Bassey, an ambitious teenager blessed with a powerful voice, at the start of a 40-year career that will take her to the very highest level of international stardom. Hers will be a life filled with drama, played out to a soundtrack of love and loss.
While it burns, what a fabulous flame!
Bassey's story begins in Cardiff, then one of the world's busiest ports. Merchant ships from across the globe plied their trade here, servicing the booming coal industry. Some of the sailors docking in Cardiff saw a chance of a better life. Many met and married local girls. A unique mixed-race community grew up in a district known as Tiger Bay. In 1937, Shirley Bassey was born here. Her father Henry was a Nigerian sailor, and her mother Eliza was British and white. Shirley was the youngest of 7.
Tiger Bay, of course, was a notorious enclave, but unkindly notorious. It shouldn't have been, because it was a great community. It had all sorts of nationalities there, but it also had a reputation for music, not just Welsh music, but music of so many other different nationalities, different ethnic groups, and I think that went deeply into Shirley's performances as she matured.
Among the seamen that used to come into Tiger Bay in the docks were American seamen and black American seamen, and they would bring a lot of the records direct from America to Tiger Bay. So jiving and jitterbugging and all that was commonplace in Tiger Bay, as was a West African high life, calypso, all of that sort of. We had a wide range of music in the community. All of us were exposed to it. But Shirley had a natural, powerful voice.
And she just wanted to sing. So she found places for herself to sing. And I think that was maybe a little dream that one day she would be discovered, which she was.
She was shy about singing as a kid. She would, when they wanted her to sing in the family, she would sit underneath the table with the tablecloth pulled down so that she was out of sight. But she would sing then, but she didn't want to be seen singing.
Music would provide Bassey's escape route, eventually. But her early years were hard. Tiger Bay had its own pecking order. Having an African father and white mother put Bassey near the bottom.
No, my father's from Trinidad. No, my father's from Barbados. I said, oh, my father's from Nigeria. No, Bobo, man. You see my point? You had an inferiority complex if your father was African and not West Indian. You had an inferior complex if you were half-caste and had a thick lips and a flat nose. You know, this is true. There's this kind of tensions between how you look, how light-skinned you are, if you're darker skinned, if your hair is tight and nappy. She had a very complex about her hair, Shirley, you know, because she had very short hair. And that's when she went and had it straightened and it fell out.
To try to break out of the stereotype, to try to break through everybody else's assumptions about what you're like, their prejudices, must have been enormously difficult. Add on top of that, you know, you're a working class girl, and really your destiny is fixed for you.
She was flamboyant always wanted to be in the limelight.
For the young Shirley Bassey, the only outlet was performing for pocket money in the pubs and working men's clubs of Tiger Bay.
Oh, those Wabash blues. I know I got my dues.
I had heard one day about this girl. She was 15, maybe going on 16. I think it was a pub called the Ship and Pilot. I'd been told about her. Go and see her. She somehow made such a huge impact on that load of drinkers. They were not there for the entertainment, but this girl, had been put up, and now we'll have, and let's have a bit of silence for, because here's a young girl what's going to sing now, Shirley Bassey.
Love, oh, careless love, you fly right to my head like wine. You've wrecked the life of many a gal, and you nearly wrecked this life of mine.
It was an untrained voice. It was a voice of huge impact, but it was a voice that came not only from the body, it came from the heart, almost a cry of desperation.
Wyn Calvin was working for a BBC radio show called Welsh Rarebit. Impressed by her raw talent, he invited Bassey along for an audition. It seemed like a fairy story in the making.
Shirley Bassey was in the studios for the first time, and I was told not to waste their time with rubbish like that again.
The prim and proper BBC slammed the door on Shirley Bassey. But Tiger Bay's multicultural mix was about to work in her favour.
If an American show came to Britain and it was an all-black cast, they had to, by the law, hire British black people. And because the children of Tiger Bay came from such multi-ethnic backgrounds, some families had Malay, Indian, as well as African and Irish in the same family. The children were quite extraordinarily beautiful. And so talent scouts were often coming to Tiger Bay looking for Bay girls or boys to be chorus line or background to these American shows.
One travelling show that required a chorus line of sexy and exotic girls was Hot from Harlem. Just 17, Shirley Bassey packed her bags and went on the road. From the start, she displayed a side of her personality that would come to define her professional persona.
Jenny was boy dancer, she argued with, and very volatile, but that all come out in the singing, and you can imagine that she would have that sort of personality.
A place in a chorus line selling eroticism in third-rate theatres was a small step. But Bassey's sexual naivety off-stage almost derailed her budding career.
I saw her back in Cardiff after a while, and I said, "Oh, have you got a week out, love?" And she said, "No, I've come out of that show." But it was quite obvious by her figure why she had come out of the show, and that was the baby that was referred to for a long time afterwards as her sister.
In September 1954, Sharon Bassey was born. Her father's identity has never been revealed. Bassey's singing career looked over before it had begun.
She worked as a waitress in a Greek restaurant. I mean, she didn't just sit at home. And her mother looked after the baby, and Shirley was really happy, you know, working as a waitress, and she didn't really want to go back to the stage at all.
But Ben Johnson, the dancer running Hot from Harlem, had a problem. He had been booked for a short season in the Channel Islands. He was having trouble finding a singer to fill the gaps between scene changes.
Ben had to have a singer for the Jersey show. She was the best at that time that he knew of, and he just said, "Oh, you know, I must try and get hold of her." Well, I think my mother went round to her house. Shirley wasn't really interested in coming back, but Ben sent telegrams and pestered her, and she decided to return. But I think if he hadn't have done that, I don't think there would have been a Shirley Bassey.
The man that had organised the Jersey show was struggling London agent Michael Sullivan. He wanted to see if Shirley had the potential he'd been told about. Sullivan was captivated by her raw ability and her sexual magnetism.
After the show, he invited all the cast back to his hotel for drinks, and they all got up to go, and they left Shirley with him. And he talked to Shirley and said, "I'm going to make you a star." And suddenly she started to weep. She said afterwards, "It was because for the first time in my life I knew that here was someone I could trust who would make me a star. And they stood up, and he put his arms around her, and she was a very attractive, very sexy-looking girl.
In his autobiography, Sullivan describes that night in Jersey as a passionate fling.
That was the first and only time I made love to Shirley Bassey. That doubting, insecure girl from Tiger Bay was a tigress in her own right. My back was so badly scratched that the following day I phoned my wife saying I had to stay on in the Channel Islands. Then I went to Guernsey for 5 days to let the scars heal.
She went to see him, and she came back and said, he's going to make me a star, and they're going to invest £100 in gowns. And £100 in gowns, you know, that was fantastic.
In a working relationship, Michael Sullivan was always the boss, and Shirley was always the little girl from Tiger Bay. He laid down all the things that were going to happen to her. He was going to pay her £10 a week. She was going to live in a hotel, a little place he'd found for her, and he was going to train her, and it would take 3 months, and she must work very hard. She thought, I've got a good voice, why the hell does he want to train me? You know, I can get on the stage and sing, that's all. She was very hard to quell, Shirley. You know, she was a strong character.
Michael Sullivan had spent a lifetime looking for a talent like Bassey's. He now had his sights set on the big time. He decided that she was ready for London's West End. Sullivan had a business partner, Leonard Beresford Clark. His wife was a dancer, and she spent time with Bassey during her formative years in show business.
As she started to play, you know, good dates, then I think it dawned on her that she could and was going to be a star.
Who's got a good ignition, waiting for dividends? Who wants to help me burn my candles? I'm for brands. Who's really in condition? Won't mind how much he spends. Who wants to help me burn my candles? I'm for brands.
Her West End appearances were a huge success. Bassey's teenage innocence married to her earthy sexuality was a potent and popular mix.
I remember Shirley singing songs like Burn My Candle and lots of things that would double entendre, you know, lots of very sexy, suggestive, provocative songs. And she was great at all that. At the time, it was revolutionary.
I mean, Burn My Candle was a very sexy song with a lot of innuendo, but the way she sang it, you couldn't be offended, because I mean, it was pretty near the bone, and the way she, but you still liked her. You could feel that this was going to be something big, no doubt about it.
Who was an urge to turn the handle, open my door and spurn the scandal? Who wants to help me burn my candle?
Everything goes back to Mike Sullivan. It was him who moulded Shirley and made Shirley Bassey. I don't think she could have done it without him, but he couldn't have done it without her. They needed each other.
Daddy light and I wanna go home.
Shirley Bassey was Michael Sullivan's product. He knew he had to cash in on her growing popularity. Now he wanted her to take on Las Vegas.
I've got you under my skin.
Sammy Davis really liked Shirley Bassey. He was one of her big fans. Sammy was the one telling us all in the casino that this is a great singer. And Sammy had to talk to Shirley Bassey because she was acting like she could go anywhere she wanted. He had told her she could not sit by the swimming pool and she could not walk anywhere. It wasn't that she was colored, it's that she almost didn't know she was colored in Vegas. And that would get her in trouble. As this one time, she sits at a 21 table, and a security guard is coming up behind her, and what they're going to do is just pick her up and put her out. And I come running around and grabbed the guy and said, hold it, hold it. She wanted to know what they would do. I said, they'll pick you up and throw you out in the street. She didn't believe it, but they would have.
Neither black nor white, for the mixed-race girl from Tiger Bay, the question of identity would remain a complex one.
The Bay, it's got people who really didn't have what you would call an identity of who they really are. Are you half-caste? And there was no such thing there as black and proud, honey.
Shirley Bassey's first hit record, Kiss Me Honey Honey, was in 1957. She arrived on the scene just as the music business was entering a whole new era.
In the and late 50s, you have dual releases on 45 and 78. And since Elvis Presley and the explosion of rock and roll marked the introduction of the concept of youth culture, for young people, the 45 is the big thing to have. And sales of 45s explode. And Shirley Bassey, making her first chart appearance in 1957, is right on the cusp of this change.
Songs about sex and her own sex appeal were a large part of what sold Shirley Bassey. Off stage too, she was a magnet for male attention. For some time, Bassey had been dating a young man called Pepe Davis, but as her fame spread, more and more men wanted to be around her. Pepe grew jealous of the attention. He was feeling increasingly sidelined.
Don't believe my eyes, they're the coldest eyes, but I'm not so cold. Let me put you wide, keeping the temperature so low. This is a work of art.
As media interest in Bassey reached new heights, Pepe finally snapped.
Down below in my heart.
Well, she'd been working at the Bagatelle, a nightclub, and she was staying in the Cumberland Hotel, and she was catching a plane next day to Australia, where Michael Sullivan was waiting for her. And suddenly the door burst open, and this boy, who had been her lover for a long time, rushed in holding a gun. He closed the door, and then he told Shirley he was going to kill her.
I mean, the first we heard of it was a phone call in the night. I couldn't tell you what time, probably late at night.
He rang up his mother and said, "I'm going to kill Shirley." And then he shut the telephone. And she was in tears, crying, and she knelt before him and said, "Please let me go." And he said, "All right, go."
We got the car out and went up to the Cumberland, and when we got there, she had been released from the room. And she was very calm, really. Now, whether that was shock or what, but she wasn't tearful.
For Michael Sullivan, the show simply had to go on. Despite the events in London, Bassey still made the trip to Australia the next day. Once there, she might have hoped to escape the attentions of the British press, but far from it. For now, the story of Sharon Bassey, the child she'd had when she was just 17, made the front pages. Michael Sullivan had a simple but brutal solution.
Mike Sullivan knew about the baby, and he said, "Oh, you're going to have the baby adopted, or your family's going to have, because, you know, to be a star, you mustn't have a baby." I mean, nowadays, it's a necessity, but then, you know, it was like the baby, as though it wasn't going to come out eventually. And she was very upset.
Tired of wondering how, tired of wondering why. Some were born to laugh, I guess, and others born to cry at me.
But Bassey turned Sullivan's request down and refused to allow her daughter to be adopted. In fact, despite the work he'd put into moulding and shaping his star, Sullivan's relationship with her was becoming more and more strained.
think Shirley was dissatisfied because she had this feeling that she should have all of her money.
When she went home to Tiger Bay, people would say, you ought to be rich now, you should be riding about in a Jaguar, you should be doing this. And what are you? You're still living in a little room. A lot of people put ideas in her head that she ought to be making more money than she was.
The relationship erupted one night in London during preparations for a show called Blue Magic.
The show was under rehearsal at the Prince of Wales, and it was, it was going to open. And Shirley was dissatisfied, I think, with what Mike was taking as a manager, and I don't know how much that was. But she just gave an ultimatum. She said, this is, as I say, from Mike via my husband. I was told that she'd said, well, if I don't get all of my money, I'm not going to open in the show. I think he still thought of her as his little Shirley Bassey. And of course, she was a competent, confident, wonderful performer by then. And when it broke up, it really broke his heart. And I think probably the devastation was worse for him because in his heart, I think he blamed himself.
Things look swell, things look great. Gonna have the whole world on a plate. Starting here, starting now, honey, everything's coming up roses. Clear the decks, clear the tracks. We've got nothing to do but relax. Blow a kiss, take a bow. Honey, everything's coming up roses.
I never liked him, not from the first moment I met him. I had no regard for the way he took care of her, his attitude towards her and everything around him. He was just not the kind of person I had any feeling for whatsoever. He was basically unpleasant most of the time.
Kenneth Hume was very, very theatrical. And my mother was a bit like Irene Handel, and when he came to my door in Dulwich Village and knocked on the door, she went, "Here, Jess," she said, "there's a man outside with bleeding makeup on."
Despite his growing relationship with Bassey, Kenneth Hume could still be seen around the 60s gay circuit.
And he used to take me to gay clubs, because I used to like a pose, and they was very elegant in Soho in the 60s, the gay clubs, with a little man on the piano in the white jacket playing the piano, very elegant. But he used to take me to these clubs because I was, sort of pretty boy then, and the fellas used to come round me like bees round a honeypot, and of course he had his pick.
By this time, another London talent manager, Vic Lewis, was looking after Bassey's affairs and didn't take kindly to interference from her partner.
Kenneth Hume was around a lot, to an extent that one time when she was opening at the Talk of the Town, she had a new dress that lit from the back, showed the whole of her shape to the front, and she didn't tell a soul. And of course, when I get to the Talk of the Town, I hear Kenneth Hume say, "Turn around, dear, turn around, come back, walk towards me," and all this kind of thing. And I blew my stack, because I said to Kenneth Hume, I am her manager, I will tell her what I want. I said, if you don't throw this man out of the theatre, I'll pull Shirley Bassey out. I still think the best thing that I ever did was to get her a call with Nelson Riddle. What Now My Love that he did for Shirley was a sensational backing, that kind of bolero kind of thing. And this shot her all over the world.
What now, my love, now that you've left me, how can I live through another day, watching my dreams turn into ashes and my hope.
Everywhere you went, everything was, "What now, my love?" Applause, applause for "What now, my love," And that was her I think that was the thing that made her the most.
In 1961, Shirley Bassey and Kenneth Hume were married. Although Hume had no experience of looking after a big-name act, He'd become more and more involved in her professional life. He took over as her manager and set out to create a diva.
He promised her that he'd make her a very rich woman. Quite differently to Michael, who never gave her a compliment unless it was absolutely genuinely right. He covered her with, you know, how lovely she was, how wonderful she was.
I think Kenneth did a lot of harm. I think he was a sort of one of these Bengali characters who said, when you wake up every morning, look into the mirror and say, I'm a star. That was Kenneth's thing.
Towards the end of 1963, Shirley Bassey gave birth to her second daughter, Samantha. On the surface, a happy event, but controversy over the identity of Samantha's father would soon create turmoil in Bassey's personal life. Her career too was set for another dramatic turn.
Goldfinger, he's the man with the Midas touch.
I knew her very well, and she said I'd love to do it. So, but she didn't know anything about it. She said, what's Goldfinger? I said, it's a villain, Shirley. He's the villain of the piece. You're singing about a bad guy.
Beckons you to enter his web of sin, but don't go in.
She had a terrific range, a very powerful singer. And Robert Brownjohn designed the titles, and I'd seen some of the titles, his images all of gold and whatever, hands and bodies and all that in gold. So it was kind of over the top and bizarre, which was great. And Shirley could be over the top and bizarre too, you know. So it was a good marriage.
People in this country may not realize that Goldfinger was a #1 album in the States at the height of Beatlemania. This was an absolutely extraordinary thing for a soundtrack to go to #1. And of course, the only vocal on it was Shirley's Goldfinger.
Goldfinger cemented Bassey's reputation as a top recording artist. But when it came to finding stability in her private life, she was less than successful. Her marriage to Kenneth Hume now came under pressure, as she fell for the charms of a high-profile film star.
Peter Finch was a very big star. Shirley met him, and it was straight away a love affair, you know, thunderbolt. They both fell in love. And this man read poetry to her and talked to her and said, we will be the new Vivian Leigh and Olivier. We'll act together. We've got a great future. Everything that Shirley wanted was this man, and he loved her too. But he drank a lot. And also, she was still married to Kenneth Hume. And Kenneth Hume, although he wasn't sexually jealous, he was very jealous of losing his star.
Peter Finch was on location in Israel and wanted Bassey to come out and join him. The press began to speculate that the two might one day marry.
She got out there to this small seaside town in Israel, and it was awful because the whole crew and cast knew this was going to be a flop. But he started to drink, and although he put on a performance, it wasn't good. And Shirley realised Kenneth Hume was right. He was an alcoholic, and she would throw herself away if she went with him, so she left him.
But Kenneth Hume was set on divorce. In 1965, a court found that Peter Finch had committed adultery with Shirley Bassey. Whether or not he was the father of Samantha was never proven, but a blood test showed that Kenneth Hume certainly wasn't. And then just months after her divorce came a bizarre twist in the marital saga. As she opened at the Pigalle Theatre in the West End, and whilst introducing the love song Second Time Around, Bassey announced that she and Hume were to remarry.
Well, surely you spend half your life travelling from one part of the world to another. Do you ever get the feeling that you'd like to settle down and live in one place for keeps?
No, I like travelling. I love it. You know, if I ever gave up singing, then I would love to travel to all the places that I haven't been to and catch up on my reading.
And when we used to go to Cardiff, we used to pass her mother's house. So I used to say, Shirl, just pull over and go and see Mum. Oh, no, she'll come down tonight. They'll all be there tonight. That means the sisters. I said, well, of course they will. They'll come to see you. Well, when they come, you look after them. So I said, what do you mean? They want to come up and see you. I don't want to see them before the show. On a couple of occasions, I ran Shirley, and I'd rush out upstairs. Your family's here, or tell them I'll see them next week.
Well, now, are we likely to see you back in Cardiff fairly soon?
Well, not fairly soon, I shouldn't imagine. But I hope it's not going to be as long as 2 years. You know,
a year,
like
perhaps.
This time. Maybe a year. What? I don't overdo it, you know.
Now an international jet-setter, Bassey's Tiger Bay days were over. She says she didn't drop her family. They are still invited to parties after her shows in Cardiff. On a trip to Venice and engaged to Hume once more, the couple checked in at one of the city's top hotels. During her stay, she made the acquaintance of the manager.
And one day came Shirley Bassey with her previous husband manager, Kenneth Hume, and somehow between me and her started a kind of, let's call it a platonic, you know. The only difference between her and another customer was that we had this immediate, you know, kind of liking for each other. So it was nothing more than that.
A year later, Kenneth Hume was dead from an overdose of sleeping tablets. Although it was known that he had been suffering from depression, the inquest returned a verdict of accidental death.
I don't know if he committed suicide or whatever. The reason they were in Venice that occasion was a last attempt to save the marriage, okay? Which obviously didn't succeed.
Bassey's romance with Novak now blossomed and led ultimately to marriage. As with Kenneth Hume, Novak also became her manager.
When Sergio came in, that was fine, and after that, she seemed much happier, and I think it was very good for her. Brought a lot of discipline, adored her, looked after her.
I must say, without being, you know, conceited, that I did a very good job because I changed things from this to this, and all of a sudden, everything changed, you know. Changed all the contracts with the recording companies, changed promoters, and then she started having the big hits.
Diamonds are forever. They are all I need to please me. They can steal, they can tease me. They won't leave in the night. I've no fear that they
Well, Diamonds Forever was a song that John Barry and I wrote for it. You know, it had Shirley Bassey written all over it. You know, it's that kind of song. But the producer, Harry Saltzman, didn't like it. And it was a very touch-and-go thing as to whether that would go in the movie or not. He thought it was too provocative. He said it's too sexy.
Let's refer to the diamond as if it's a man's penis. So it's a woman singing about diamonds are forever. And undress it. You want to go through the lyric? I mean, when you know that that was the thought, it's really a rather filthy song. But we just substituted the diamond. You know, you couldn't sing "Penis is Forever." You know, that wasn't the title of the movie anyway.
Diamonds are forever. Hold one up and then caress it. Touch it, stroke it, and undress it. I can see every part. Nothing hides in the heart to hurt me. I
partly because it shows you how much she wasn't completely wedded to taking herself seriously. You can't imagine sort of comparable diva singers doing that sketch. Barbra Streisand would not do that sketch. It shows how Bassey is tongue-in-cheek and intense at the same time.
So I chose them and I gaily loved to think we could down.
She hated rehearsing. So what happened? She had to do a new album. Obviously 12 songs, but you have to record at least 18, something like that, because, you know, then you take out, you have to put in. Take 1, take 2, take 3, take 4, and you could see her inside taking this sheet of music. I had enough with this. Bring the next one. But Shirley, I don't like it. So who knows how many hits she missed just because she didn't make an extra take or she didn't rehearse enough. And in those moments, she was not prepared to reason. So better get out of the way, leave her with her secretaries. Then within women, they could. And that was the solution. Let's go shopping. Let's go shopping.
Impossible to live with you, but I know I can never live without you. For whatever you do, I never, never, never want to be in love with anyone but you.
After 1973, she was a cold artist in terms of single sales. But here is where her ability to command a live audience saved her. Her audience was very loyal because she had cultivated this crowd that loved her dress sense, her gestures.
Time to hesitate is through. No time to wallow in the mud.
She uses her body to articulate what the orchestra is doing a lot of the time. Like if there's a timpani roll, she'll often do that sort of thing with her hands, and it really hits you right there.
Sing, Johnny, one note,
Her performances are absolutely natural. They stem from the heart as well as the body. The voice is phenomenal. It is a leather larynx that has lasted wonderfully well.
You don't care no more. You don't care no more. You just don't.
There's a couple of times I've seen her just wanting to scream because of the power of what she does and because of the way she looks and because of the way that she emphasizes what the orchestra is doing. It's very sexual, it's very enticing, it's very glamorous, it's very cinematic.
The 70s seemed to bring years of happy marriage and one of the more settled periods in her private life. But then in 1979 she became romantically linked with her road manager, Ken Carter. Her second marriage was over. In the mid-80s, she made a controversial career move. She joined a number of big-name stars to play Sun City in South Africa during the height of apartheid. The colour of her skin would once again become an issue.
Now you
on which
tell
side
me.
are you on?
You tell me.
On which side are you on?
Why I'm on no side. I have a black father and a white mother. Thank you very much.
Shirley Bassey's decision was clearly a mistake. I would be, and I think I probably was, one of the first to criticise her for that. But I think that we always have to be a bit careful here. Because somebody is a public figure, because they're in the public eye, that does not mean that they are capable of making sophisticated and right political decisions. That doesn't mean they're stupid, it just means they're not politicians.
She never felt black in her thinking, in her talking. She never wanted to be involved in all these Luther King, blah, blah, blah. She hated that. I am a singer, I'm an artist, I don't care about politics, about race. So, no, I don't think color meant anything for her.
1985, and tragedy was to strike Bassey's life yet again. She received the news that her second daughter, Samantha, had been found dead in the River Avon.
I know that she suffered when the youngest one, Samantha, at least I still don't know if it was an accident, it was a suicide, what it was. But the fact that losing a daughter at 21 or 21 was a shock.
Shirley had been taught that the show must always go on. But the shock of her daughter's premature death would prove too much, even for her.
She'd walked out on stage in Australia and doing a concert, sung for a few bars, and then the voice completely cut out, and she came back about 3 times and tried to get it right, and in the end had to give up. There were a few things that she had been doing wrong, and of course, when you get something psychological that really upsetting you, anything slightly wrong with the way you're producing your voice can end up in disaster. There wasn't very much she needed to know to put things right, but it's apparently, bless her, she says it's saved her life, and it's made a big difference to the rest of her career.
The word is about, there's something evolving. Whatever may come, the world keeps revolving. They say the next big thing is here, that the revolution's near. But to me it seems quite clear that it's all just a little bit of history repeating.
Shirley is about the campest woman there has ever been. Judy Garland was a gay icon, but she wasn't intentionally camp, she was tragic. But during the era of gay liberation and people coming out and so forth, Shirley is a more suitable figure in a way because she's coming out. Let's face it, she's as out as anyone can be.
Gay men have always tapped into excessive female performance, have always relished that love of melodrama, that love of excess. She's not so much over the top, but she doesn't really know where the top is. She doesn't believe in the top, she just keeps on going.
Shirley Bassey.
Nearly 50 years on from the pubs and clubs of Tiger Bay, Dame Shirley Bassey still holds her place at the top of her profession. A dramatic life story matched only by the intensity and passion of her performance. Bassey has become a true diva.
What I think a lot of people love about Shirley Bassey is that she was pretty wild, you know, and she's got a ferocious temper and all those kinds of things, but at some level she's also the queen mother of British show business. So she's somebody who's gained respect without ever being completely, boringly respectable.
If I take into consideration those 12 years, in spite of this up and down, the dramas, it was a great experience and a great part of my life.
When you're in her company, especially when you see her on the stage, you feel you know her, and yet you can't get close to her. There's something about Shirley Bassey that is mysterious, and I think untouchable as well.
Where do I begin to tell the story of how great love can be? The sweet love story that is older than the sea. The simple truth about the love he brings to me. Where do I start? Where do I begin to tell the story of how great love can be? The sweet love story that is older than the sea. The simple truth about the love he brings to me. Where do I start?
Continues here.